top there with our guest, Brother Haki. Brother Haki's an actress in Baltimore. Many of you heard of him before. He's also a member of the Maryland Black Foundation, Maryland Black Caucus Foundation. And he was at the Reparations Conference this weekend. He's giving us a report on the Reparation Conference. Before we left, though, we talked about the fact about RFK, because, Brother Haki, Professor James Taylor said the first of these candidates who are running for the presidential office that said they support reparations, they're going to win. He didn't think that Donald Trump could even muster his voice to come up and talk about reparations for black folks, but he thinks there's some reluctance on the behalf of Joe Biden. Well, this is counted now. Yesterday, RFK says that he would give, he's vowing to give black farmers $5 billion with a B in reparations if he wins the White House. How much of this do you think is just talk? How much of this is just pandering to black folks to vote for him, or do you think he's something real behind this?
Well, I think he's a little non-orthodox, so I think that he's able to recognize that the Democratic Party and the black people that support the Democratic Party, 20% of the Democratic Party's base. And so what you have, many people, I don't know if you recall, Carl, that you come in many black people's houses, and what you see pictures of Martin Luther King, Jesus, and the president, the former president, John F. Kennedy. So many, although his family has endorsed President Biden, he's perhaps now seeing just what ultimately he can salvage. And so, grasping at, particular constituencies may be a strategic and tactful move. But, I'm not sure, where's the hook or the constituency that he's going to grasp. And particularly, Carl, just an FYI, that Dr. Cornel West was present in D.C. Just yesterday, and I'm not sure if he came some of the other days of it, but I was there just Friday and yesterday at the National Press Club, and so Dr. Cornel West did give an actual address there, and obviously he is lockstep, and his running mate, Dr. Melina Abdullah, she did a live stream, the vice presidential candidate there. So, we have some options, and it would be appropriate for President Biden, if, just being objective here, to look at this and look at the black constituency and to address these issues, Carl. And Brother Cam has a website. I don't know if I gave it out a couple of minutes ago, but it's earntheblackvote.net. Earntheblackvote.net. So you can go there and read up on all the, what we're simply saying that these candidates have to earn black people's vote.
Yeah, they certainly do have to earn our vote. They should earn our vote. They should reflect what we need. And both of them, well, all the candidates. I'll throw in RFK since he's running Cornel West as well, and Sister Dr. Melina Abdullah. They all need our vote. And so, but what are they going to do for us? I think again, that's where we're going to have to make our decisions, Brother Haki. But we got some people who want to talk to you at 25 at the top there. Let's go to line 2. Brother Akbar is calling us from the district. Brother Akbar.
Assalamu alaikum to both of you.
Is that Minister Akbar?
This is Mr. Akbar. Happy to greet you this weekend, Brother Haki. And we
yes, sir.
We were joined there by Dr. Tony Browder was there, Dr. James Small, some of your other guests were there present supporting the reparations and the move for the West campaign, the Dr. Cornel West presidential campaign is picking up more momentum. We're proud to serve with people who will mention us. Some call him Joe Biden, some call him Ho Biden. But look at the timing of something he wants to give the farmer. But the people that voted him, they were rounded up by I call him Jesse James Clyburn, rounded up the black folks for the land, but the people suffering at the diesel and the gas pumps are black people. The people that are complaining at the grocery counter, especially in Whole Foods and other big spots, and black people don't want to frequent the health food, but it's priced so high, and Biden has not addressed the gas or the grocery problem to address the constituency of the voters that voted for Joe Biden. He has not addressed them. That's not as barely as Carl Nelson and Brother Haki, you both know. There's barely an ink stain anywhere in Washington, even after the Obama drama and all of that. No one mentioned the black people or specifically said that we have some legislation that we know is going to aid the black community. And therefore, we take exception to the whole Biden. And now many of those votes are being transferred over to the West campaign. They're crossing over and coming in bigger droves than you could imagine because no one has mentioned us in the last 40 or 50 years, probably since John Fitzgerald Kennedy. And they were overcome by the Johnson, and they acted like they wanted you to have a Civil Rights Act, act like they want you to have a voter, but they really don't want you voting and acting and getting independent, going free for yourself, because they support the systems of gentrification. These cities, they don't move one muscle to stop and say, hey, no, we need to preserve this for the black community. They have taken down in D.C. Eckington Elementary School, turned it into a dog park. It was supposed to be Marcus Messiah Garvey Park, and Brother Haki and I were observing and working with the networking there inside of the Reparations Weekend. And the Honorable Salas Muhammad and the Dr. and Attorney Malik Shabazz have done a phenomenal job in bringing us together to shut down Capital One Bank, to shut down Wells Fargo. We'll be this morning with the future president and candidate Dr. Cornel West will be to personally tell you the problems with Wells Fargo Bank. I have personally taken the stack of quarters from the industrial bank now and passed those quarters out in front of the Wells Fargo Bank and say, ask them to come. And people will push me down, push me out of the way, getting to Wells Fargo, knowing that it's
But Minister Abba, let me interrupt you and ask you this, though. So connect the dots for us. The banks that you got, the protesting and reparations. Connect those dots for us.
Yes, sir. We know that the track record of Capital One Bank especially had teamed with the Catholic Church and others and done unfair business practice. I went to California and personally went to Samuel L. Jackson, asked what's in your wallet. And he showed me that Capital One Bank card. And so I popped him an industrial bank card and said, I've been there 50 years. It's not the very best in competitive banking, but we're at least banking with ourselves. The Honorable Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said that you must take your money and wealth out of those establishments and put them in your own bank and manage your own wealth. And he has two cut the checks. One that has been marked insufficient funds, meaning the check they gave us in the way of programs were insufficient to meet the needs in the black community, Honorable Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And then he said, I'm going to D.C. to cut the check. He wants them to cut the check for reparations back in his time. That's why I say there's not been an ink stain since Dr. King. And so I think Cornel West represents that renewal, the rejuvenation of real black politics and getting something on the front line for black people by mentioning black people, not in a promissory note, because Joe Biden had all these 4 or 5 years to do something under Obama as well as now. And reparations, we know that our inventions, our science, runs the full, complete, and entire modern world. It's on our scientists. Honorable Dr. Benjamin Banneker laid the city out, barely has an alley, got a field behind Howard, but nothing of substance for Benjamin Banneker. I'm still reading his almanac. The Honorable Daniel Alexander.
Minister Akbar, we got a bunch of folks want to talk to Brother Haki, and I want to give him a chance to respond. But I thank you for sharing that information, especially about the banks for us.
Can I say this last thing, that the taxation alone, my staff is saying, will pay the full, complete, and entire debt for reparations. I think Bob Johnson asked for the $1 trillion, but if you got 50 million black people, you do the math. $50 million to start out in 5 acres. Give that to Guarantee Morgan, who invented the traffic light system Lewis Latimer for the filament and the like. They refused to pay us for our bite, for our contributions and our inventions. But Michelle Obama made that statement that my house is built by a slave, and all of those monuments that the world come to see in Washington was erected and built by black people, and we want to be paid, repair the damage to our patents for reparations, and give us our land back so we can live a decent life in America. And I thank you. Assalamu alaikum to you and all the family, and thank you all for supporting the reparations weekend. It was a phenomenal success and will be a continued success for the black people living a decent life right here on the soil. Mama. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
All right, thank you. Wa alaikum salam, Minister Akbar. Brother Haki, you want to respond to anything that he said?
Well, thank Brother Minister Akbar, for his, always being on the front line. I just want to, just real quick call, just give a few names of some people that were there. Brother Akbar mentioned the Honorable Salas Muhammad and his wife, Harriet Asbu Baka Esquire, Mama Nikichi, Attorney Nikichi Taifa, as well Professor James Smalls. He mentioned Tony Brada, Mama Nzing, Ifia in Mongwana, and a few others that Brother John Barnett. It was a long list, but I just wanted to name a few that I saw. I wanted to, let people know that these are, as well as some of the Afro-descendant nation brothers and sisters that were present. But we can go ahead and take a call, a brother call.
All right, I'll tell you what, we come up on a break, break your rhythm. So we got a bunch of folks who got questions for you about this the reparations weekend that took place in Washington, D.C. And as Minister Akbar mentioned, there's still reverberations around that reparations conference. They're doing it today in front of some banks in the district. What are your thoughts, family, about reparations? Your thoughts about the RFK that want to give our black farmers billions of dollars if we vote for him? And we still haven't come to a consensus on what we want. We talk. Some people say they want money. Some people want land. Some want tax breaks. Or we haven't cleared those issues out yet. So those are the things we need to talk about, and these are the things that Brother Cam was going to discuss before he got sick real this morning. So we want to thank Brother Haki for stepping up to the plate for Brother Cam. As I mentioned, we got to take the break. We'll be back in 4 minutes, though, at 26 minutes away from the top of the hour. We're back in 4 minutes right here in Baltimore on 1010 WOLB. If you're in the DMV, we're on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL. For information is power. You say Brother Haki's an activist in Baltimore. Many of you know him with that. He's also a member of the Maryland Black Caucus Foundation. Brother Haki, before we go back to him, though, let me just remind you, coming up later this morning, we're going to speak with a warrior scholar, Brother Baba Mwalimi Baruti is going to join us. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff with him, of course. Also, later this week, we're going to discuss the Black Liberation Day celebration, biggest one between D.C. and Baltimore. It's going to be in Baltimore again. They do it every year. Also, chematologist Tony Browder will be here, and futuristic researcher Brother Sadiq Bakar will also join us. So if you're in Baltimore, make sure your radio's locked in tight on 1010 WOLB. If you're in the DMV, we're on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL. Again, I'm going to shout her out every chance I get. And that's one of our listeners, Doris Marla Wilkins. She's 97 today, family, 97. Happy birthday. She lives in Temple Hills, Maryland. And she's a graduate of Morgan State University, class of 1949. They just honored her the other day. So I want to shout out to her. And by the way, in the 90s, she took a trip with us to Africa. I'm not sure if it was Kenya or Ghana, one of those countries she went with. She was on the tour with us. So shout out to her. Have a great day, Doris Marlowe Wilkins. Anyway, let's go back to Brother Haki. Brother Haki, do you want to say something before I'm taking the call for you?
Yeah, I do, Carl. Thank you. But Brother Akbar mentioned several companies, but let me, he mentioned banks. But let me just mention ExxonMobil, Standard Oil, Aetna Insurance, Chase Bank, CSX Rail, Bank of America, and Fleet Boston Financial, several universities, Brown, Harvard, Georgetown, Yale. They built campuses and multi-million-dollar endowments because of their ownership and forced labor of thousands of enslaved blacks that were used and exploited for his profit. So I just want to put a few others out there, but they at Wells Fargo as well. Maybe if they didn't go yesterday, they're going this morning. Thank you.
All right, 20, we're waiting for the top. Let's go at some folks who want to speak with you. Let's go to Brother Carlos. He's on line 5. He's in Waldorf, Maryland. Brother Carlos, you're on with Brother Haki. Brother Carsey on line 5?
Hello?
Yeah,
Hello?
there you go. All right.
Grand Rising, my dear brothers, and Brother Haki. Brother Haki, can you hear me, my dear brother?
Loud and clear, sir.
Oh, good. Listen, I have a pragmatic political question to ask you, but I just wanted to make a brief comment about Robert F. K. Jr. and possibly Cornel West. I believe Robert F. K. Jr. has a serious. I think he has a serious problem. He is what we in the hood would call a mess. Talking about a worm eating his brain, and the way he presents himself and talks, I think he is quixotic, what they call quixotic in his thinking. And Brother Cornel West, who doesn't have a snowball's chance in hell of winning, I think also has some serious issues. But here's my question to you. I think, and this is good that they're exposing the corporations all across the nation who were involved in slavery. But do you think that any politician, based on your political acumen, any politician would be pragmatic in his decision-making, thinking to come out before the election and to announce support of reparations, or do you think that would be like a death knell for him because of the way people hate Black people across this nation? What's your thinking about coming out and pronouncing support of reparations at this point in time, realizing Biden, he can't run again, so it would be probably more practical after the elections for him to support such an issue, such a program as our reparations. What's your thinking on that, my dear brother?
Well, certainly, I think it's a growing, and Brother Cam, he sort of laid out the history of the changing perceptions, and Mama Nkechi laid out the changing perceptions about reparations and the growth of the reparations movement. At one time, the percentage just keeps growing into where more and more people are beginning to, understand the reality that this is what our Black community needs to heal, and ultimately to closing the Black and white wealth gap in America. I mean, you have people, talking about why we don't need financial literacy. I mean, that all comes into play, when you're talking about historical injustice as well as creating a level of equity. Because, I mean, there's honestly, I mean, if you look at the 300-something years of slavery, 310-year period of chattel and slavery, the Black Codes, Jim Crow, and other policies that were used to contain and control the Black economy to keep us in perpetual servitude, we know that just us working hard, these little, these ideas, they don't necessarily serve us. So ultimately, I'm first and foremost, I'm looking for the Black officials, to push our cause as an issue. So, I mean, ultimately, when you say whether a presidential candidate, they may or may not, they looking at us like a number, and they will ignore you if you don't make enough noise, and if you don't have your leadership speaking on this issue. And so we have to ensure that the HR 40 is, certainly being pushed through Congress, and, as well as in the Senate side. So, and let me just plug, they did walk the halls of Congress Chairman Malik and Minister Najee of the Afro-descendant nation. They did, go and see different congresspersons. So ultimately, it's things like this, movements like this, weekends like this, where they saw Cornel West speaking, that can raise the conversations and make it appropriate to not just ignore Black people, and they have to earn our vote. So ultimately, that's what weekends like this take. We just have to recognize that we're 20% of the Democratic voter base, and we got to put it up in their face as a form of our power. And individuals need to be conscious and Black enough to do that. So that's what I'll say, brother. Thanks,
right.
Carl. Thank
you. 14 away from the top of the hour. A bunch of folks want to talk to you, Brother Haki. Let's go to line 4. Sandra's calling us from Baltimore. Sandra, good morning.
Good morning, Carl, to you and your guests. And it's a good thing to come behind Brother Carlos. And I like to say this to Cornel West. He needs to go back and give Frederick Douglass back to the Smithsonian and sit down and shut up. As far as Robert F. Kennedy, I wouldn't believe nothing he said. That man's brain is ate up with crack. So as far as them two trying to throw out something and think Black people going to catch on to it, they can go somewhere and sit down. As far as the Black farmers, there's a bill out there already. They trying to get money. And President Biden has been working on them with. So they don't want to give President Biden no credit. Look at what they did to him in Morehouse. I was shocked. Some of them people sitting there at the commencement turning their back on him, and he just gave them $16 million more dollars. He already gave $7 billion to him, and what have Trump given you? Absolutely nothing. So all these Black people who sitting there don't want to acknowledge what President Obama is doing for the whole Black people. They need to go somewhere and stop drinking other people's water and Kool-Aid. As far as Cornel West, I wouldn't believe any man with a lie gap in his mouth. I don't believe nothing he got to say and running around trying to steal from presidential clothes. He got a mental problem.
Wow. Sandra, we're going to move on because we've got a bunch of folks who want to talk to Haki. Sandra's saying, Sister Sandra's saying they have credibility problems with both of those candidates. Your thoughts, real quick.
Well, I mean, one thing that many people are being critical of President Obama is cozying up to Netanyahu. There are many people that feel like they gave him a name, Genocide Joe. Like there are elements of the Black community that Cornel West is speaking to, and I don't know about his other issues, but some people are really serious about this Gaza issue. So the reality is that President Biden is going to have to deal with this reality that there's a large constituency that feels very strongly about that. And so that's all I'll say. Thank you, brother.
12 away from the top. Yeah, let's go line 2. On line 2, Brother Uru is calling us. He's in the district. Brother Uru, a Grand Rising, brother. You're on with Brother Haki.
Grand Rising, Brother Carl Nelson. How you doing, brother? I'm getting ready to get off the phone. Brother Malik Lulu Sabah told me. Get off that phone. Thanks, Brother Carl, I got to get off the phone right now.
Okay, we understand. All right, thank you.
But thank the brother. Thank the brothers for being on the front line.
All right, 800-450-7876, 10 away from the top of line 3. Tyrone's waiting for us. He's in Baltimore. Tyrone, good morning.
Good morning. Wow.
Okay, brother Tyrone.
Yeah. How's it going there, Haki?
Good, brother. Good to hear you, brother. Frontline soldier. He's been pushing a Marilyn Mosby agenda forward, taking the movement to a different level in different spaces. All of the team are doing a good job. With that, we had a good weekend with our sister, and we're going to push on that as well. Absolutely.
Also, Haki, you put out at the time, the judge, Marilyn Mosby, informed me yesterday that the judge had moved the trial up to 9 o'clock. So it's going to be at 9 o'clock at 6500 Cherrywood Lane. in Greenbelt, Maryland, 20770. Okay, at 9 o'clock, they moved it up. And as she said, the devil's always working to try to break us up on the night. So we got to be careful. As soon as we're about to get a blessing, devil's at work. All right, that's what she told me. Those are her words. All right, that's true.
Right. Yeah. That's a tactic.
Right. And Tyrone, we come up on a break. So do you have a question about, comment about reparations for Brother Haki?
Yes. I wanted to find out, number one, that what would the reparations be in the form of, and are there any considerations for the suffering we had with the war on drugs and mass incarceration and Jim Crow that happened after slavery? We had a lot of suffering after slavery that impacted the Black community, and they say it would take us 300 years to catch up with white people, without reparations. So, could you answer those questions, Haki?
Thanks.
Well, certainly. Well, here's what, and I'm reading from Brother Reginald Muhammad and Michael Muhammad's book, and they have different models in this book that that how you set this up. There's a council. There's different organizations, Black leaders, students, youth, to come together to address this. And many people have done some tremendous work. I have this book right in my hand called, I sent you a picture of it, National Reparations Declaration, and the forward is by Dr. Ray Waynebush. But, there's 4 actual parts, stages, if you will. Well, let me just say the people that should be: those who died fighting, those from the invaders of the villages, those who died in the barracoons, those who died in the Middle Passage, and those who died the first 2 years of captivity and trauma. But I wanted to just encourage everybody, look this book up. It's called The National Reparations Declarations. Reginald Muhammad and Michael Muhammad, they have done conferences, and I actually met Brother Reginald Muhammad. I don't know if he was there this weekend because I was at the Maryland Mosley thing on Sunday, but he was in Atlanta for the last reparations conference where I was able to attend as well. And Brother Malanga Karenga, Carl, we got a second. I want to read this statement from him.
Well, hold that thought right there, because I mentioned we got to take the break. I'll let you do it on the other side, though.
Okay,
We're 6 minutes away from the top there. Our family back in 4 minutes. Hopefully we get some more calls before we speak with the Warrior Scholar, Emmeline Baruti, Brother Baruti, right here in Baltimore on 1010 WLB, and the DMV on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL, where information is power. Keep rocking. And Grand Rising family, and thanks for rolling with us. Momentarily, we'll be speaking with our Warrior Scholar, Emmeline Baruti. He'll be joining us, but let's wrap up with Brother Haki. So, Brother Haki, I'll let you finish your thought.
Well, certainly, thank you. And let me just say that, well, to answer Brother Tyrone, just briefly, I would say land, absolutely. I mean, 45 million to 50 million Black people. We only have about 2 million acres of land, but also there was 14 million acres of land taken between Blacks between 1866 to the present. And so I'll just say that. And also, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Mama Nkechi Taifa's book, Reparations Now. And I would also say to go to earntheblackvote.net. That's Cam Howard's website, his organization. So definitely there's tremendous amount of information there. But Mama Nkechi in the B&B area is our premier scholar on reparations. And so I just say thank you, Brother Carl, for this opportunity.
No, before you leave though, Brother Haki, Ken in Florida has a question or a comment for you real quick. He's on line 5. Let's go to Ken in Florida. Ken, Grand Rising. Is Ken there on line 5?
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead, Ken.
Okay. Grand Rising. Haki, one of the things that I think that maybe need to be added to the reparation is for African Americans to have a nation of their own. One of the things that the Jews understood coming out of the Holocaust, and it's not a right or wrong question, but they saw the need for a nation of their own. And I think we as African Americans, as part of the reparation, we have to begin to get control of our own destiny. I'll hang up and listen to you offline. Thank you.
All right. Brother Haki.
Well, we're coming on a weekend of Malcolm X's 99th birthday. He will be at 100 next year. And Malcolm X said land is the basis for all independence. And so we gave up land to get a vote. And I would say that there needs to be some conscious efforts towards understanding the land. And as I will quote my brother in D.C., there's no culture without agriculture. And so certainly that is the direction that many of our great teachers have raised. And so with that, Brother Carl, you have another the premier scholar of our time, and Malimu Baruti, coming on. And I don't want to take any more time, and I'll greet him with a BB for Hodie, and I welcome him to Carl Nelson Show. We definitely love him in the Baltimore audience. So thank you, Carl.
Thank you, Brother Haki. And a Grand Warrior Scholar, Grand Rising at Maloney Baruti. You heard what Brother Haki said. Your thoughts, sir? Line 2, Kevin. Yes, sir, Scholar. Brother Maloney Baruti, Grand Rising.
Yeah. Grand Rising. How you doing?
Excellent, brother. Excellent. And I'm glad you jumped in on this conversation. This is one of our top scholars, family. And it's been a minute, I think this has been on. But, you know, we started our conversation with Brother Haki talking about reparations. So I'm let you pick it up from there, because they had the reparations conference in Washington, D.C. this weekend. And one of the questions, Brother Baruti, is the question of what we need. We haven't figured out to come to a consensus on what we need for reparations. Your thoughts on the reparations issue?
Absolutely. And I was just talking, interestingly, I was just talking to the little ones about reparations on, Tuesday, on Sunday, because one of them was asking essentially the same question. One of the things that I focus on, and I wrote a book called Sovereignty and Remembrance, and in that book, half of the book is dealing with the idea of reparations, because I've been watching, over the years, Brother Reginald Muhammad, who I believe is at the conference, we've had many conversations about that. One of the issues that I have with the reparations movement is the watering down of the demands over the years. I think it's extremely important that we get reparations. And of course, we look at the chart and we see everyone has gotten reparations except for us. But the reparations, to me, part of the movement has been to request things that are not going to make Europeans uncomfortable. So we've been focusing on the amount of money that we should receive based upon the number of man hours that were done during the time of our enslavement. And of course, people like Mama Rumba have made it clear that when we talk about reparations, we can't limit it, number one, to that. One of the things that we really don't focus on, and the court system in this country focuses on a lot, is the damages that were done, the emotional damages, the psychological damages. And people are going to say, well, that's, we have to ask for what's real. When you have power, then you ask for what you want, or you take what you want. That's part of the understanding. So when we're talking about reparations, what has been done to us as a people, we need to have an equation that incorporates all of the things that were done to us and all the things that continue to be done to us, because the Ma'afa, the great destruction of African people, hasn't ended. It's like we're trying to focus on one aspect of that, the time of our actual physical enslavement on plantations in this country, and that's nowhere near the extent to which I argue we need to have reparations for. So we'll go through this thing whenever I'm doing the reparations lecture. We have to incorporate, because we are a people, because we have feelings, because the damage that was done to us, this post-traumatic slavery syndrome, which of course even that is limited in terms of time, but the damages that were done to our minds, the damages that were done to our families. I mean, I talk about it in terms of equations. How do you put a dollar value on the lives that were lost during just that short period of time? There's a story, which is a true story, from a plantation, of course, in the South. I believe it was in Georgia, where the adults were in the field, and they put their children in kind of a gully, the babies and the infants, the toddlers, in a gully under some trees to keep them cool, because obviously there's no trees out in the field. And the children were, well enough trained and knew how to wait for their parents. So the adults saw some clouds coming in, and they asked the drivers, the overseer, could they, go take care of the baby, get the toddlers, make sure they were safe. And of course, they were told no. So they didn't dare to leave. There was, shortly after that, this quick downpour of rain, and they then broke free. They didn't care whether the driver overseer said they could go or not. They broke for their children. When they got there, the gully had been flooded. All of the babies, all the infants were dead. I'm trying to figure out, in terms of us as a people demanding reparations, exactly what kind of dollar figure we're going to put on that. Somebody put up a nice set of pictures about a week ago that was showing these European curators who had all of these masks, all of these statues, all of these sculptures stolen from African people. We talk about European Jews, we talk about them getting their art back, them getting their jewelry back, them getting their gold back, the gold that Hitler took out of their mouths when he first came in and took over. So for me, the demands are somewhat, they're pretty limited in terms of what we should be demanding, because we're trying to make it convenient for the people. We're trying to make it so that there's the possibility that we will receive something that we are owed. There's another factor in here which a lot of people don't consider. All of the reparations that have been given by this country and the European world have been based on the power of the motherland, of the people who they gave the reparations to. The Japanese who were interned during World War II in those camps, they weren't given reparations until the United States became a debtor nation to Japan. So we have to look at European Jews. We have to look at how, when they received reparations based upon the power of their people. They don't have any reason whatsoever to even think about giving us reparations based upon that, because the respect for our motherland is almost non-existent. So the idea of demanding reparations that are equivalent to what we are owed, the probability of that right now is small, because there's nothing backing us up. There's no power to back that up. So we talk about reparations or preparing for reparations or demanding reparations, and we need to also look at the condition of our motherland and what we need to do relative to that, so that they will know that if they do not give us reparations, they're going to be retaliations from the motherland.
Wow. Interesting conversation right there. 11 after the top hour. Before I take a call for you, though,
yes,
people say we deserve reparations for what we went through when they dropped the drugs in our community. We know that the federal government was part of putting the crack cocaine in our community, and the residual effects are still being noticed right now. Crack babies, crack mothers, crack grandbabies, and the effects of that. Should that be thrown on the request line as well?
Absolutely. I really don't see anything that should not be there. It's like we're talking from a position of powerlessness. Wade Noble said, power is ability. You create reality. You create your own power. Power isn't something that's given to you. And for you to have to beg for something when, you're talking about hundreds of millions of Africans who were murdered on the quote unquote Middle Passage, getting us over here. That should be part of the reparations package. So we can't just talk about, okay, now all of the drugs that were dropped into the community, all the guns that were dropped into the community. And for me, also, this is to be a larger thing. We're everywhere. When you talk about reparations, and I'm talking about the European nation, if you will, giving reparations to the African nation. What was done to Africans in Australia, New Zealand, Tasmania, what was done to Africans across the continent. Okay, that should be part of the equation. If we're talking about what's being done to us now, the damage that's being done to us, that continues to be done to us now, and is escalating. Okay, it hasn't stopped. That's why whenever I'm having this conversation, I keep coming back to Mama Ruma's definition term, the Ma'afa. Our enslavement was only a part of that. The destruction of African people continues on. It hasn't stopped, and it goes back way before the time of our enslavement, and it goes much farther than just this country. I don't think we should limit it to just what happened in the southern states of the United States. I mean, we can look at what's going on in the northern states of the United States. We can look at what's going on in the western states of the United States. I mean, we're all over the place. I think it was very insightful when Eric Williams in Capitalism and Slavery, he made a very quick point. He said the European nation rose because Africa fell. He didn't say that, Belgium rose or England rose or Switzerland rose or the United States rose because of the enslavement of African people. He said, no, the European nation rose because Africa fell, or if you will, Africa was taken down. So that needs to be, to me, that should be the context in which we're talking about reparations, the damage that was done.
Right. I know that's all right there, Brother Brewer. We got to take a short break. And of course, Eric Williams, I think, was the late Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one.
You're correct.
Referred to. 14 after the top. I mentioned we're going to take a short break. Got some folks want to talk to you about reparations. It's just one of our Warrior Scholars family. Some of you are hearing for the first time. You want to speak to him? Reach out to us at 800-450-7876. And we'll take your phone calls in 4 minutes right here in Baltimore on 1010 WOLB and in the DMV on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL, where information is power. Family, 21 minutes after the top. Thanks for rolling with us all morning long. We have one of our Warrior Scholars with us, and Walimi Baruti is our guest. He's an elder, and I know we wanted to talk about character and rites of passage and manhood, but folks want to talk about reparations, Brother Mwalumi. So let's go to Jay calling from New York. He's on line one. He has a question for you. Grand Rising, Jay.
Yes, hotep to you, Carl, and definitely hotep to the Warrior Scholar, Baba Baruch. I go back with Dr. Clark and Dr. Ben, and as I see it right now, Baba Baruti is the foremost authority to continue their work and lead us forward as an African people. I would just like to say this quickly before I get into my question. Baba was right on point in regards to reparations. You can't expect reparations from this Urugu if you don't have power and a connection with your homeland. That's the only way you're going to get it. And unfortunately, in regards to my question, Black people have no power nor no direction moving forward as an African people. Now, Baba, my question is this. We've been here for over 500 years. Mm-hmm. We, as they say, are basically the third people who've been there, from the Native American, the Urugu, and now the African. My question is this. with the conditions that African people here in America are in, not manufacturing, producing, or being able to control any industry in this country. How do we as a people move forward? What direction should we be going in? And I say the direction is going back home or building enclaves here separated from this Urugu with the prime thing of security. So how do we move forward, Baba, to survive? Because we're competing against every ethnic group in this country, and we ain't beating none of them in nothing. Hotep, my brother.
Thanks, Jay.
And that's part of the issue, because we're not just fighting against other groups. We're fighting against the majority of us. The vast majority of us don't want. I mean, I'm looking at. I've looked at the statistics relative to the desire for reparations in this country, and more of us believe that it's more balanced in terms of those of us who believe we should receive reparations and those of us who believe that we shouldn't receive reparations, with the majority of us wanting reparations, but it's not a significant difference. So when you're talking about reparation, when you're talking about building things, it's the same thing as, when I was, I'm 68. So when I was young, the idea of building something African in most of our minds, whether it's here, whether it's global, whatever it may be, to them, that's hate. And we don't understand that other people have been practicing that and continue to practice that for themselves and against us. So if we're talking about, there are several aspects of this. One of the aspects has to do with time. Okay, we want a solution now. We've been brought up in this instant gratification reality where if it's not done now, we're not really working at it. We have to understand that we are 7 generations people, which means that what I do now, I expect it to have an impact 7 generations down the road. So I know that if African people are going to become empowered, then I have to work toward that now. Another factor with that has to do with size. We believe that we have to have, 40 million people in this organization in order for it to be effective. When we look back historically, we see that every large organization that we have created to empower ourselves has been destroyed, has been literally wiped out in terms of its effectiveness by Europeans, by CIA, FBI, police, whatever you want to call it, however you want to phrase it. So if we're supposed to be learning from history, if we're supposed to be learning from our story, then one of the things that we need to understand is that we need to organize below the radar. Hey, that's not a conversation that we can have, in this space, even though this is a beautiful space. This is not a conversation that we can have in this space in terms of the specifics that need to be done. But history should have taught us that we need to go about the business of quietly organizing, because when you have enemies who are trying to destroy you, who are trying to remove you from existence, who are trying to keep you from power, then the last thing that you need to do is to let them know what you're doing. What we need to do is to create networks, create businesses, create global connections that allow us to continue to build with an eye on the future. Right now, it's like a huge, horrible snowball that's rolling down a hill and is collecting snow as it comes down. We have it, and it's picking up speed. In order for us to change the situation, not only do we have to slow this snowball down, we have to stop that snowball and then begin the process of pushing it back up the hill. It's still picking up speed going downhill right now. Part of the process of that, a piece of the process of that, is to teach our children who they are, teach them of their power and their privilege, the responsibility of that privilege to serve African people. And when we say serve, we're not talking about slave. We're talking about warriors being service of the people. That means that we find out the issues and problems that we have and we solve them. In order for us to move forward, the most important factor, and I don't think we're getting off subject here, but the most important factor that we have to redevelop is that trust. How are you going to build anything with African people if we don't trust each other? if we can't work together, if we can't create organizations and communities and businesses, et cetera, whose loyalty is first and foremost to African people, understanding that we're not going to see the outcome of this in this generation. Even some of the most revolutionary organizations in this country now, they're still integration focused. They're still about the business of trying to find a way to create this society where everybody can just get along. But we're still going to be at the bottom of that society where everybody's getting along. So we need to teach the children. The children need to understand, number one, our story. Number two, the concept of enemy. Number three, the concept of sovereignty, the very idea of sovereignty. We're not talking about freedom, liberation, and the rest of that. And reparations is a piece of that because what was done to us, our underdevelopment, Walter Riley said, our underdevelopment has kept us from being able to be who we are, to have the power that we need to do the things that we need to, to do. And our children need to understand that it's like we have taken our children, if you want to destroy a people, then you attack the children. And our children are being attacked by every possible angle that turns them away from who they are, against the power, against African people, super individualism. So they don't see a need. The children don't see a need for reparations. The children don't see a need for us to build a nation. The children don't see a need for sovereignty. We're going to be gone soon. And then they're going to be responsible for the progress of African people. And if they don't see us as African people, then, this is kind of like a wasted conversation, because they're not going to be doing things to continue building what we are attempting to build. So for me, above all else, the focus needs to be on educating the children correctly. Adults practicing the art of protecting the community, of building within the community. There are things that are going on in the community that if you have men in this community, we shouldn't see happening. But we're relying on people who have destroyed us, worked very hard at destroying us, to defend who we are, to protect us from who we are. No one else does that. No one else does that. I remember in Chicago, we were in grad school there, and there was I believe it was a Polish community. There was this billboard up in their community in Chicago that had some kind of vodka, some kind of vodka advertisement. And the people, representatives of the Polish community, went down to City Hall and they complained. And of course, the older people, they said, well, we'll handle it. We'll see what's going on with it. A few weeks later, the poster was still there. So they went back down to find out what was going on and complain again. And they got the same response. So the next day, the billboard was burnt to the ground. Of course, the aldermen, everybody up in uproar, how dare you all do this, do that, but they built it again and they burnt it down again. Our community, we're going to be standing there with picket signs for 30, 40 years, and the billboard will still be up there. We selectively pick those things that other people do that will not antagonize them. People of power don't worry about who they're antagonizing. They pursue the interests of their children. They pursue whatever it is that will give their children the advantage. Our pursuit is to figure out how we can get our children better involved with the people who are destroying us.
Family, that's why they call him the Warrior Scholar. We're coming up on a break. We're going to have a bunch of folks got questions for you. But real quick, you said something that was very interesting. We've got to, make our plans under the radar. How can we do that? And because you talked about unity, and we've got people who look like us who are going to sell us out. How do we deal with them?
Well, and I think we are doing
hold
that.
That thought right there.
Sure.
Yeah, because we're coming up on the break, and I'll let you explain that on the other side. And as I mentioned, we got a bunch of folks got questions for you. Family, our guest is they call him the Warrior Scholar, and if you just heard what he said, you understand why. His name is Molimi Baruti, and he's written several books, by the way. He's some of the stuff that he's talking about, he's written them. They're all in book form. And before he leaves, he'll tell you how you can get a copy of the book. But right now, let's step aside and take our last break. We're back in 4 minutes, though. 26 minutes away from the top of the hour, right here in Baltimore on 1010 WOLB. If you're in the DMV, we're on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL, where information is power. And Grand Rising family. And thanks for rolling with us all morning. It's been another interesting morning. Right now, I'm with Warrior Scholar. His name is Molimi Baruti. And several things. We start off on reparations, and we got a bunch of folks who want to talk to you, Brother Baruti, from across the country. If you can show up on the answers, I'll appreciate it. Before we do that, though, let me just remind the family who's coming up in the next few days. We're going to discuss the Black Liberation annual Black Liberation event taking place in Baltimore this weekend, Black Liberation Day. Also, a chematologist, Tony Browder, will be here, and also futuristic researcher, Brother C.D. Picard, all going to be here this week. So if you're in Baltimore, make sure your radio's locked in tight on 1010 WOLB. If we're in the DMV, we're on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL. And also a shout out again to our birthday girl, Dr. Doris Marlowe Wilkins. She lives in Temple Hills. She's 97 today, family. She just received an accommodation from her alma mater, Morgan State University. She in class of 1949, so she's still going strong and was with us on one of our trips to Africa. So shout out again to Doris Marlowe Wilkins. Brother Brewer, my question for you before we left was about, you talked about unity. So how the people who how do we do that? You said we're planning something, do it on the down low and use unity, but how the people who are going to sell us out look like us. So if you can really give us a quick response to that, I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's just a long and tedious process, but it's not complicated. You spend the time searching for people and working with people who are of like mind, who understand, clearly understand some history, and you work with those individuals to develop whatever it is that you need to develop, whatever your interest is, whatever, it is that you do good, and you work on that and you pursue whatever that is without concerning about keeping the feelings of people who would destroy you on your plate. We have to stop being afraid of our children and make sure that they understand what it is that we need to do.
All right, 20 away from the top here. Mike's calling from Baltimore. He's on line 3. Mike, you're on with Brother Baruti.
Carl, how you doing? Brother Baruti, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
I'm doing great, brother. Look, you talked about something. You talked about the Jewish people having something over America, which was their power and their influence. You talked about the Japanese. They owned America's debt. They had influence over Germany at the time that they got reparations. And I'm leading up to my point is I've been talking about it for a couple years now. How are we expected to make America pay us when they have no intentions on doing it, when half of white people are doing just as bad, and if not worse, than black people, and how they're going to feel about African Americans getting something when they're not going to get it. So I'm trying to get the people to understand is that we have to have a mechanism to make them do it. They're not going to willingly give us reparations. No way in hell would this country stand for it, because it would be anarchy in the streets, because whites might riot. Not understanding that if we got reparations, especially monetary reparations, it would flow right back into the economy, just like a stimulus check came. And that's the way I would try to persuade them. But other than that, boycotting the lottery, you have to hurt them financially before they will give up reparations. The Jews owned the debt and had the power influence, so they got it. And the Japanese owned America's debt. And it was a time when they demanded, they said, well, we're going to cash in our bonds. We're going to make you pay one way or the other. And America chose to do it and let them hold the bonds. How do we do it when we don't have industry, we don't have a Navy, we don't have an Air Force, we don't have an Army, and we're not united? That's my question, Doc.
Thanks, Mike.
That's an extremely good question. And, what amazes me is that not you saying that, but when we say that there are things that we can't do, that's what I'm talking about, long-range planning. I remember Malcolm talking about, well, if we're getting set up for this race war because we're pitting, white folks that don't have, against us, or the elite whites are doing that, if you will. We can't. I don't think we can so much worry about what we don't have now. We need to understand it in the way that you just said it, but there's nothing whatsoever to keep us from doing whatever it is that we need to do to build that. When we look back at who we are, what we have done, when we say that we are genius, and we can't say that we're a genius, but we can't do this and we can't do that. Either we are or we're not. So if this is something that we need to do, and you've picked up the points of what needs to be done in order for you to have the kind of leverage where you can demand, not ask, where you can demand. In fact, you don't have to demand. It's going to be given to you without you even having to ask or demand it because of the fear that they have of the retaliation if they don't. But that's also talking about that under radar development. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to develop that. And part of that process, of course, is developing the motherland. Okay? Even though we have many politicians there who are obviously loyal to Europeans, we have to have some long-term goals. We have to have some long-term aspirations. We have to have some long-term development starting now, starting before. And I firmly believe that getting that message out there does it. I firmly believe that there are some young folks who understand, who see clearly what is wrong and what needs to be done, and they're working on it, and they understand that this is not something that they need to publicize.
All right. 17 away from the top. Let's go to line 1. James is waiting for us. James is in Washington, D.C. Grand Rising, James. You're on with Brother Baruti. Is James there on line 1? Kevin? I'm not hearing James.
I'm here.
Oh, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead. I said go ahead.
Okay. There's a book that was done by a brother. I won't give the book, the name of the book over the air, but I would love to. I'll call you, Carl, and give you the name of the book. And the book was written by a brother from the area, and it was years ago, decades ago, really. And he outlined exactly what you're saying. And when you began to talk about we have to be very clandestine in what we do and not telegraph everything over the air, you're absolutely correct. And I'm glad you said that. But there's also a book, Brother Baruti, if you haven't gotten it yet, it's called Sins of the Father.
Mm-hmm.
And that book catalogs who basically profited from the transatlantic slave trade.
Mm-hmm.
It gives you the different companies, whole 9 yards. And you need the UK edition. The author's name is Hennessy.
Mm-hmm.
Sins of the Father. Because Lords of London insured the cargo ships.
Yeah.
And if you look at, and they keep immaculate records.
Yeah, and James, do us a favor, because a bunch of folks got questions for him. Can you put in a question for him so he can respond?
Okay, why can we not put together the monetary funds and do the research ourselves? Because you have Randall Robinson's book, The Debt.
Mm-hmm.
That's a beginning.
Yes. Well, if you don't have the idea, if you don't have the information, that's part of the process. That's the beginning of the process. Putting the idea out there, not expecting people to necessarily to say, okay, I got the idea, but putting the idea out there because people are listening to put the idea out there in the first place. But you also have to understand the level of trust that we don't have for each other, which is a result of the mafia, which is a result of us being enslaved and being separated from each other, if you. So, this also has to be understood within the context of time. This is going to take some time. Understanding what they did, it took them some time to do it. It's an African proverb, a Kemetic proverb that talks about if a reed is bent in the wrong direction, it's got to be bent even further in the other direction in order for it to become right. And we're talking about hundreds of years of return. People don't want to hear that, but we're talking about hundreds of years to have to build this up. But it has to be done in such a way that it's not undermined in the process.
Right. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
And having said that, before I take another call for you, are you hopeful that it will be done? That it can be done?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Anything that we put our minds to. I don't doubt that there's anything that we can't do. That's the way I was raised. Can't die before you were born. That's what I was told all my childhood.
I like that. 14 away from the top. Ben's in Laurel, Maryland. He's on line 4. Ben, you're on with Brother Baruti.
Hello, Carl and your guests. Good morning. This is an important topic that could go on forever, the reparations. And I would like to say reparations did take place. The 40 acres and a mule in Georgia was an attempt at reparations. And look what happened. Your guest said, there would be blowback. So, yes, there was serious blowback with that because Sherman signed Article 15 and blacks got land along the Atlantic coast, and the white plantation owners. I think you talk about being clandestine and what we do. I think what happened is they came to Washington, and Johnson was the president at the time, and they said, "Man, listen, if you give those slaves land, and all they wanted was 40 acres and a mule, we will be wiped out in the cotton business." So yes, that had to have been what happened with the Southern Democrats. But reparations is an important story. In slavery, in the Caribbean.
And hold that thought right there, Ben. Let me ask Brother Baruti what you just said. Brother Baruti, do you think that's the fact that what he said about the fear in our community? He talked about what happened, and we could look at Rosewood and Tulsa. Do you think that fear still is in our system, of many of our systems of our people? Why we're reluctant to embrace reparations or doing anything like that?
Absolutely. Even if it's at a subconscious level, we understand who we're dealing with. We understand what we're dealing with, and we act accordingly. We control ourselves accordingly. We regulate ourselves accordingly so that we do not upset the powers that be, the powers that are, because we don't want to die. Okay, you talk about the slave mentality. We don't. The perfect slave is the one who do whatever needs to be done in order to stay alive. Doesn't make a difference if it kills their children, interferes with future generations, what have you. So we're still stuck in that. We're still stuck in that fear because there's a reason for that fear. When we move now in the wrong direction, when you have a African who's an entertainer, or African who's an athlete, and he decides he wants to go against Europeans, what happens to him? So that's very visible to us. We're not confused on that point. I don't think it's just that we have different ways of rationalizing it to make it seem like everything is fine.
All right. Thanks, Ben. Sorry, Ben, but I had to ask that question there. But
Okay.
that's your question for Brother Baruti.
The same question is, what is it we're supposed to do? Because we keep putting ourselves in this position is that we're the victims, but we're allowing the perpetrator to decide what it is we're gonna get from reparations. And we got to change that whole dynamic as we're talking about reparations. We're here on this show talking with this learned man and with you, but what about we have the power structures that we have. We have the Congressional Black Caucus. Are they talking about that? Because the Secretary General of the United Nations, actually, Antonio Guterres, brought it up. But where are our leaders talking about that? What he's saying is right. We need to do, but there's no movement to actually do that properly. And
we're racing the clock. So let's give him a chance to respond to that, Ben, because we're racing the clock. We got a bunch of folks that want to get to it. But I thank you for your call. Brother Baruti, real quick.
You have to have a constituency that is willing to force these leaders, these quote unquote leaders, or say misleaders, to deal with that. Okay, because I said a lot of us don't want them to deal with that. A lot of us are like mine. A lot of us are very proud of the fact that we are sub-integration focused in terms of the policies that we pursue and the friends that we make. So you're talking about changing things. Again, we're talking about time. That's something we don't want to talk about because we understand the urgency of the situation and we want it done now. But we have to understand this is not going to be a quick fix. There's no quick fixes to that, and it's not going to be an on the surface fixing of this. It's not going to be a correction that's in the public eye. It's going to be something that, just like with other groups that have come to power, they organize by themselves in their own homes accordingly until they reach a critical mass, and then they made their demands, and then they got what they wanted. We're not willing to do that. We're too comfortable with trinkets. We're too comfortable with the idea of being in the quote unquote greatest land on the planet. Whatever that country does to us, we can always look at a European and say, oh, well, look, that happened to that white boy. Same thing happened to that white boy got lynched too. So we're so busy trying to rationalize our desire to remain under their control with the idea that whatever they do is going to benefit all of us. We got to get out of that mentality, and that's going to take small groups of people, little bit by little bit, because it's not going to happen on a large scale. Most of us want nothing to do with this. Most of us wouldn't listen to this program right now because we don't want to hear that. We don't want to hear anything that has it, because we see that as taking away from being in the city of privilege.
So true. You know, well, we just ran out of time. We got a bunch of folks from Chicago, different parts of Maryland had questions for you. We'll have to pick it up again some other time. But your books, you've got several books out. How can folks get more information on your books?
They can go to www.akobenhouse, AKOBENHOUSE.com, AKOBENHOUSE.com. All of my books are there. All the DVDs are there. Workbooks, everything that I write is there and available.
So they can reach you online as well from that same website.
I'm on Facebook. They can look up Bob and Walamu Baruti or Walamu Baruti and just message me. They can also email me, and that's mwalimubaruti@yahoo.com, MWALIMUBARUTI@yahoo.com, or just search Google Baruti or Mwalimu Baruti, and the information will come up as well.
All right. Thank you for sharing that information with us this morning. We've got to do it again because a bunch of folks are trying to get at you. We're just flat out of time. Thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing again one more time.
I appreciate you. See you soon.
All righty. Family, we're done for the day. We got to get out of here. Stay strong, stay positive. Please stay healthy. We'll see you tomorrow morning, 4 o'clock, right here in Baltimore on 1010 WOLB. If you're in the DMV, we're on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL, where information is power. And Grand Rising family, 20 minutes after the top of the hour with our guest, Brother Haki. Brother Haki is an actress in Baltimore. Many of you heard of him before. He's also a member of the Maryland Black Foundation, Maryland Black Caucus Foundation. And he was at the Reparations Conference this weekend. He's giving us a report on the Reparation Conference. Before we left, though, we talked about the fact about RFK, because, you know, Brother Haki, Professor James Taylor said the first of these candidates who are running for the presidential office had said they support reparations, they're going to win. He didn't think that Donald Trump could even muster his voice to come up and talk about reparations for black folks, but he thinks there's some reluctance on the behalf of Joe Biden. Well, this is counted now. Yesterday, RFK says that he would give, he's vowing to give black farmers $5 billion with a B in reparations if he wins the White House. How much of this do you think is just talk? He just, how much of this is just pandering to black folks to vote for him, or do you think he's something real behind this?
Well, I mean, I think he's a little non-orthodox, so I think that he's able to recognize that the Democratic Party and the black people that support the Democratic Party, 20% of the Democratic Party's base. And so what you have, many people, I don't know if you recall, Carl, that you come in many black people's houses, and what you see pictures of Martin Luther King, Jesus, and the president, the former president, John F. Kennedy. So many, although his family has endorsed President Biden, he's perhaps now seeing just what ultimately he can salvage And so, grasping at, particular constituencies may be a strategic and tactful move, but, I'm not sure, where's the hook or the constituency that he's going to grasp. And particularly, Carl, just a FYI, that Dr. Cornel West was present in D.C. Just yesterday, and well, I'm not sure if he came some of the other days of it, but I was there just Friday and yesterday at the National Press Club, and so Dr. Cornel West did give an actual address there, and obviously he is lockstep, and his running mate, Dr. Melina Abdullah, she did a live stream, the vice presidential candidate there. So, we have some options, and it would be appropriate for President Biden, if, just being objective here, to look at this and look at the Black constituency and to address these issues, Carl. And Brother Cam has a website. I don't know if I gave it out a couple of minutes ago, but it's earntheblackvote.net. Earntheblackvote.net. So you can go there and read up on all what we're simply saying that these candidates have to earn Black people's vote.
Yeah, and they certainly do have to earn our vote. They should earn our vote. They should reflect what we need. And both of them, well, all the candidates. I'll throw in RFK since he's running Cornel West as well, and Sister Dr. Melina Abdullah. They all need our vote. And so, but what are they going to do for us? I think again, that's where we're going to have to make our decisions, Brother Haki. But we got some people who want to talk to you at 25 after the top here. Let's go to line 2. Brother Akbar is calling us from the district. Brother Akbar.
Assalamu alaikum to both of you.
Is that Minister Akbar?
This is Mr. Akbar. Happy to greet you this weekend, Brother Haki. And we
yes, sir. Amen.
We were joined there by Dr. Tony Browder was there. Dr. James Small, some of your other guests were there present, supporting the reparations and the move for the West campaign. The Dr. Cornel West presidential campaign is picking up more momentum. We're proud to serve with people who will mention us. Some call him Joe Biden, some call him Ho Biden. But look at the timing of something he wants to give the farmer. But they were